moderate the event. If anyone has any questions pertaining to the debate, please write them down and hand them to the town clerk and Iantelli seated in the front row. If time allows, I will ask those questions to the candidates. All questions will be asked through me. No direct questioning to the candidates will be allowed. Some questions have been submitted previously via email to Ann. Those questions will be asked first to the candidates. The previously submitted questions have not been shared with anyone. This is the first time I've seen these. Well, 2 minutes ago, but you know what I mean. After these candidates speak, candidates will each get 2 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to respond to questions. When there is 1 minute left, the town administrator, David Gagney, will hold up a green card informing the candidates. When time has elapsed, the town administrator will hold up a red card. I ask the candidates to stop talking at that time. Please stop talking. The annual town election is on Saturday, April 8th at the Spring Street School. Polls are open 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. There is no vote by mail or early voting option for this election. Only absentee by mail or in person for the following reasons. A registered voter who will be unable to vote at the polls on election day due to the absence from the voter's city or town during polling hours, disability, or religious beliefs. Please contact the town clerk's office for more information or to request an application. The deadline to apply for an absentee ballot by mail is Monday, April 3rd by 5 p.m. The deadline to vote absentee in person is Friday, April 7th by noon. So we've also received, like I said earlier, we've received quite a few questions ahead of time, so we may not get to more tonight if people are writing down more, so we'll try the best we can. With that being said, we're going to move into the uncontested races. Let's get started. So first up, we have Brad Wayne Pysko, the incumbent running for re-election for Board of Health. He's not here. Okay. Next, we have candidate for school committee, Christine Myaskovsky.
Now, is that really good? Thank you. So my name is Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Christine Myaskovsky, and I'm at 188 North Elm Street. My family and I have moved to West Bridgewater about 10 years ago, and I currently have 2 kids, young kids, in the school system here in West Bridgewater. I have a master's in library science from Simmons, and I've worked in the educational publishing field for over 17 years. I volunteered with the Friendship Playground over there, and I'm a volunteer currently with the West Bridgewater Cultural Committee. A little same as like they're always looking for new members for the Cultural Committee. Now I'm here today because I would like your vote for school committee because I'm a big believer in volunteering what you call home community. And I want to help enrich and enhance our children's education in our town. Our school has some amazing teachers and staff, and I want to make sure their voices are heard along with parents and the community. We might be a small town, but we should really aim to be the best school in our community. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, next up, me. So, thank you guys for being here again tonight. My name is Jason Ross. I am the moderator for West Bridgewater, and I'm also running for constable. I talked to the Ethics Commission in Massachusetts, and they said, go for it. You know, you can do both, hold both positions. And Bruce Holmquist was a really close friend of mine. He was one of the people who encouraged me and a lot of you and a lot of people in town to get more involved in the community. And the great thing about Bruce was he said, the best part about helping people is not telling anyone. You know, he would be the type of person to just help people. You know, so he's one of the people that really shaped my involvement in town. So I would be honored to continue his term, finish up his term, and I hope the voters can take a chance on me for this position. I did bring bumper stickers and pins on that table there if you guys want some. It's a pretty old school campaign, I guess. I also have lawn signs if you guys are interested. But yeah, I would love to continue to serve the town in this new position. I'm not an expert constable. I'm gonna be honest with you, when I pulled papers, I really didn't know what constable was, but I have done a lot of reading, and I think I can, you know, do the best I can. Thank you. So next up, we have candidate for trustee of public library, Scott Ames, the incumbent.
Good evening. Scott Ames. I live at 4 Stonecroft Farm Lane. I'm a lifelong resident of West Bridgewater. Been married for 23 years this year. I have 2 kids. One's a senior right now at South Bay for nursing, and a son who's a freshman at Worcester State. I try to help out as much as I can. My background is electrical engineering from Northeastern University, class of '87. However, the last 30 years, I've actually worked as a Microsoft programmer, Microsoft consultant. I love to volunteer my time. I'm currently on the Old Bridgewater Historical Society. For 17 years, I've been a judge at Northeastern for the senior electrical engineering class for the capstone. Boy Scouts, I've taught at Merit Badge University for 5 years until COVID ended all of that. And I've been on the library trustees for about 5 years. One of the trustees wanted to retire. I volunteered to do a rewiring project of some electronics that they had in their media room, and they thought it came out really nice. So they asked me to be a trustee about 5 years ago, and I said sure. And I try to give back and help wherever I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have a candidate for trustee of public library, Kelly Caprellian.
Hi, my name is Kelly Caprillion. I'm from, I live at 6 Norman Avenue. I have had family in West Bridgewater here my whole life, and in 1998, my husband and I moved here and started our own family. When my children were young, I spent time volunteering in their schools, all the way starting at Spring Street, all the way up through the high school, supporting their sports programs, helping out with the cross-country team, running the snack table, and anything that needed to be done that I could help with. I've also volunteered with both the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts in town here as well. Now that my son is a soon-to-be high school graduate and my daughter is off in college, I wanted to continue to serve our community as a trustee of the library. We have a great library here in town, and while I love books, they have a variety of services that extends well beyond that. With over 200 programs that the library offered last year, it truly serves everyone in our community. It has actually been the one institution that my entire family can enjoy and never be too young or too old to take part in. With museum passes, historical programs, craft nights, mothers groups, book clubs, all kinds of things that are offered, the library is managed by a wonderful staff. With my appreciation for the library and my professional background in operations management, I would love to serve as a trustee to support and ensure that our library's continued success here in the community serves as a positive asset. So thank you for your consideration and your vote.
Okay, next on the list is John Cruz for Water Commissioner, and I don't believe he's here. Okay. Next up is candidate for Board of Assessors, Paula Bunker, who's an incumbent. She was here.
Yeah, she walked out. Yeah, she's out.
Well, we'll jump ahead. Oh, she's the next candidate too. So we'll jump ahead to the next candidate. Okay, well, is James Noyes here? Perfect. So he's running for planning board as an incumbent, and if Paula comes back in, she'll talk after James.
Thank you, and thank everybody for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. My name is Jim Noyes, and I'm running for the planning board. First off, I do want to apologize to the two selectmen candidates. I have a prior commitment at 7 o'clock, so I won't be around for the debate. But I wish you both good luck during the debate and for the election. Just briefly, I think everybody's familiar with the planning board, but a lot of people have misconceptions. Our role on the planning board is primarily to review site plans and subdivision plans. We review them for conformance with the rules and regs of the town and also the zoning bylaws. The number one question everybody on the planning board gets is, why did you approve that development? Well, legally, we have to, as long as they conform to the rules and regs in the planning board subdivision, in the zoning bylaws, we have to approve it. There's a lot of development in town. We recognize that, and what we do is make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. I'm an engineer by profession. I'm a civil engineer, so I do take my expertise in that field and apply it to the plans. And the first round, when we see plans, I'm amazed, you'd be amazed at what needs to be corrected in order to comply with what we think is a good subdivision. One thing, we don't do affordable housing. That's the Board of Appeals, and we're kind of happy about that. But the reason I'm running, hopefully a lot of you people have seen me around before. I grew up in town. I was born here, raised here, went to West Bridgewater High School. I'm also a Northeastern grad, so Scott, they must be doing something right. But I do feel an obligation, and I have all my life. I was in the Boy Scouts back when I was a kid, and we did a lot of projects within town, and I just kept that going over as I grew into an adult, and I've been hopefully working with the town and again in the background for most of my life. So I hope if you, I'd feel honored if you'd vote for me on Saturday, April 8th. I do have the experience, and as I mentioned, I do have what I feel are the qualifications to be on the board. We do have a wide range of expertise on our board, and I think we do have a great planning board. So I appreciate it very much, and thank you.
Okay, Paula has not come back in yet, so I guess we can go on to the debate. So in front of me, I have all of the questions. I'm going to ask both candidates to sit up here at these tables through the duration of the debate. They can choose whichever level they want. Oh wait, what? Oh, pull a number. Okay. So we're going to pull a number.
The NFL, flip a coin.
Yeah.
Well, the Russians can't hack this. So I'm gonna mix them all up. You're the incumbent. You can put them on next to you. Yep, great. Get this look at it. So you get the different tables, and you will go first for the opening statement, and you go first for the closing statement. You want this one?
No, but I trust the consistent.
We're going to start with opening statement.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Mary Anderson, and I am running for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. I'm born in West Bridgewater. I was raised here. I went to West Bridgewater High Schools, graduated, and I also went on to Northeastern University. I got my accounting degree there, and then I went on to Suffolk. I got my master's degree in tax. I'm a CPA. I have a master's in tax, and so I understand the tax law. I understand municipal finance. It's a language that I work in every day. So I'm very comfortable on the Board of Selectmen and the related policies that go with it. I also have a lot of motivation and love for this community. I got married, my husband and I built our house here, and we plan to live here for the rest of our lives. We plan to retire here. So my children go to school here. They're currently in the elementary schools. So between my husband, my kids, and myself, we're pretty integrated in what goes on in town here. And I'd like to continue to represent and stay on the Board of Selectmen. Mary Anderson.
Jeff, your opening statement?
23 years ago, my wife and I made one of the best decisions of our marriage when we decided to move here to West Bridgewater. We were welcomed into this community with open arms. We immediately knew that we made the right decision. One of the great things about this town is its people. Young, old, people just like us that chose to live here, and people that have lived here for generations. We come together and make this place a great place to live. Shortly after moving here, I immersed myself into volunteering with various organizations. I started out with our youngest residents as T-ball commissioner, which gives me a skill of herding cats should it ever be needed in town again. I went in to spend almost a decade in leadership roles in the YAA, eventually being elected and re-elected president. As my 3 kids moved on to the high school, I was elected and re-elected president of the Boosters organization for 3 terms, and then 1 additional term as their treasurer. In terms of town government, I was on the Economic Development Committee and the Cable TV Committee. During the process of building a new high school, I served as chair of the Friends of the West Bridgewater School Building Committee, and have been proud to serve on the Recreational Space Committee and the Finance Committee. I've seen a lot of change in the time that I've lived here, but one of my goals is to ensure that West Bridgewater remains a great place to live, raise kids, and retire. Time and again, I've taken leadership roles, set goals for each organization, and achieved them along with the great volunteers that I served with. I am asking for the opportunity to make those same kinds of contributions on a broader scale as the next West Bridgewater Selectman. I look forward to sharing my vision with you on how to do this as we go through the evening with the questions that many of you have submitted. I will share more about my 3 main objectives, which are fiscal responsibility, to ensure that we're doing what's most important for the town without pushing people on fixed income out of their houses. Managing growth so we don't lose what's special about our town. And improving communication so we can address things like water issues and changes to our school buildings.
Thank you. Dave, just a quick question for you and Ann. She pulled the first. Now, does she get to be asked the first question, or is that just completely separate?
It's rotated, so whatever you prefer to do.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I will tell the crowd when there are questions that are geared towards both candidates or questions that are geared towards a specific candidate. And even when a question is geared towards a specific candidate, the other candidate can have the opportunity to answer if they want. They don't have to, but if they choose to answer like how they would have handled it or how they would vote, they have the option. And any question you guys don't want to answer, you don't feel like you have to answer. But I will ask all the questions that were submitted. So I'm going to ask the first question. This one's directed to both candidates. I'm going to start with you, Mary. Why is there no police presence anymore? Never see cars pulled over, no traffic enforcement, see a lot of speeding and dangerous driving. What is your position on this? Can we hire more police to curb this? Also see a lot of littering on the street, trash and advertising signs on telephone poles. Is there any concern regarding the presence of the town?
So I'm a little surprised to hear that there's no police presence in our town. I know that in speaking with the police chief when he's come before us, he's talked about the number of cars that are on rotation and about possibly adding additional ones. He has not brought to the attention that he needs to increase the number of staff, but I'm sure if he did, he would have really good reasons and numbers to support it. Ooh, sorry about that. I know he's very good at watching the overtime line, and so that's something that we discuss each year. And as being part of the finance committee, I was the chair for over 6 years, I'm very intimate with the budgets, and I am confident that the police are there and present. As far as the trash on the side of the roads, we should have a lot of pride in our town. We have an amazing community. I know during the spring, that's when the DPW is out there cleaning up. And yes, there is a lot of pride in our community, and I have a lot of it as well.
Jason, thank you. I'm going to disagree with that statement from police being out in the street and about. Most recently, what comes to mind is we have the highest rate of tickets for people texting in their cars. So I think that's something this town has always done a good job on, and I know that what the police department has done has honestly gotten me to put down my phone. You never know where they are. They're lurking. But they definitely get out there and they do that. I also live off of Crescent Street, and I can tell you that frequently I see police sitting on Crescent Street. You know, I assume speed traffic. Fortunately, I see them as I drive by, not the rearview mirror. But as far as that goes, I confidence in our police department and what they do. Is there always something more that can be done? Yes. And that's something that has to be managed through budgets as well. As far as littering, again, we live off Crescent Street. We have a dog. We walk that dog, down Crescent Street. There's always way too many nips, way too much trash. We definitely see that, and that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. It's something that we need to take more pride and figure out how to take more pride in our community. It's a little hard on Crescent Street, as it's a cut through for a lot of people, and I don't think they treat the town as theirs, as it's often somebody passing through the town and not somebody that lives here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this next question is also directed at both candidates, and we're going to start with Jeff. Why do you want to be selectman, and what do you consider to be important qualities of a selectman?
So that's two questions. I'll do my best to answer 2 questions in 2 minutes. Why do I want to be selectman? We're at a real critical juncture here in town. We have some high expenses potentially on the horizon, right? We have a new water treatment plant, if not 2, that could total up to $14 million. We have the potential for a new school. Our last high school cost $63 million, cost the town probably 32 of that. Looking ahead, I don't have a crystal ball and I know everything, inflation and whatnot, we're probably looking at something around $50 million, if I had to guess, on the school side of things, for the town to pay. To get through that and to make that work, we just need more fiscal responsibility in town. We need to really buckle down where we can and stop spending money on things that we don't need to. I have the ability, I've spent my entire career crunching numbers, doing analytics and problem solving, and I would like to do that here. I have the skills that I think we need to get that done. Again, I will work hard to keep West Bridgewater affordable for all the residents, and I know that I'm the right person for this town, and I really want to make the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question.
Yeah.
Why do you want to be selectman, and what do you consider to be important qualities of a selectman?
Thanks. I think education, experience, motivation, and love of the community are extremely important to be a member of the select board here in West Bridgewater. I have the education, and I certainly have the experience. I was the president of the PTO. I was on the Complete Streets Committee. As a selectman, I was appointed to, or I guess I was elected, to the Metropolitan Planning Organization of the Old Colony Planning Council. So I attend meetings there every month, and I'm trying to take the information that I'm learning there, where they're talking about all these different infrastructure grants and how we're going to be able to use them and implement them in our community. So I think my education, my experience, and my drive to really take care of everyone in this community is what is going to make me the better choice for Board of Selectmen.
All right. The next question is directed to Mary, but both candidates can answer this. During the November Selectmen's meeting, when the tax split was set, you said you were tempted to leave the tax split at 1.44, which would have increased the average tax bill by $451. The other selectmen and select women recommended that a 1.46 split which resulted in a lower increase of $382.65. Although you voted in favor, you then warned them, we have to be mindful of the future. Why did you recommend the higher tax increase, and what did you mean by being mindful of the future?
Currently, the tax split is split between the residential and the commercial side. So when we talk about what the split is, it's what the impact is going to be to each residential and to the commercial tax rates. They're set differently. Right now, the tax rate is very heavily weighted on the commercial side. And at some point, we're going to have to find a balance and bring it up a little bit on the residential side. It's not something I want to do. It's not something I'm looking forward to. However, looking at the numbers and understanding what needs to happen in the future and how these expenses are going to be paid, we need to be mindful that the tax rate, the way it's currently split, is very light on the residential side. We need to be mindful as we make these decisions for expenses that that tax rate split may also change and have an impact on each individual's taxes.
Thank you. Jeff, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Jason. I watched that November 15th meeting, and I think it's important to recognize two votes that took place that night. The first vote was on the Russo Fields, and my opponent's first vote, the tax impact on that first vote was an additional $400 per household. That was followed up by almost another vote for $451 per household. When I talk fiscal responsibility, the point that I'm trying to make here is potentially adding $850 to somebody's tax bill is not fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Okay. Next question, this is for both candidates, and there's a couple parts to this. Are we in the process of upgrading our water supply and water quality in West Bridgewater? If so, in what ways are PFAS being considered? As a selectman, what role do you play in relation to the water board in the upgrade? And we're going to start with Jeff for this question.
Thank you, Jason. As far as the water department goes, I had the opportunity to sit with one of the water commissioners for a little more than 3 hours and get a deeper and better understanding of what's going on in the water department. There are 2 pilot studies taking place right now to better identify what's in the water and what needs to be treated in the water. That is underway, and those studies, they are not conclusive. There's no conclusion yet. They did have to pause one study because we're getting too much color in the water and adjust some of the filtration to make that move along. So the water commissioners are on it. I think they're working hard to correct it. As far as PFAS goes, 2 parts to PFAS. The first part is while it's harmful and it shouldn't be in the water, it's the state that dropped the regulation down as low as it did. And that might be the right thing to do. But the water we were drinking 2 years ago with no knowledge of PFAS or the level of PFAS is the same water we're drinking today. Not that that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be corrected. It needs to be corrected through filtering, particularly charcoal filtering. And there's 2 budget items that are on the agenda for the May meeting. It's a maintenance and revision to one of the water treatment plants, as well as another upgrade on the filtration to another water treatment plant. So at the capital budget meeting a couple of weeks ago, that proposal, one was for $4 million and another was for $10 million. So I think the water issue is definitely an issue, wholeheartedly an issue, and one that needs to be addressed. But I think the water commissioners are working really hard right now to address it. 2 pilot studies, 2 plans for upgrading treatment plants to handle the issues. Thank you. One last piece. It's a mandate that came down from the state that's unfunded. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind as we elect our state leaders and state representatives. When they make changes like this, they have to help fund that through the town. And there's not much of that going on right now.
Thank you. Same question.
Thank you. Yes, at the Capital Budget Committee meeting a few weeks ago, my opponent and I were both members of that committee. We heard from the water department and the potential for 2 large investments coming up, $4 million and $10 million for these water treatment plants. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, I can tell you that we have allocated the ARPA funds to specifically be used in the building of the water treatment plant. So we've already allocated and designated funds to help reduce this overall cost to all of the taxpayers. One thing to know is that the water rate is not set on the tax side. The water rate is handled by the water commissioners. they set the water rate. That has no impact on the tax rate. However, we do need to be mindful of what's going on in the water department and that these expenses are going to be increasing because we don't want to increase the water rates and the tax rates at the same time. So we need to be mindful of the whole puzzle, not just our individual pieces.
Thank you. Next question. This one is directed at Mary. We're going to start with you. Based on your votes and actions the past 3 years, it seems like your primary focus is on the younger generation. If reelected, how do you plan on avoiding taxing the elderly and those on a fixed income out of their homes?
We're going to have to continue being very careful with the budgets. Right now, every year, there's been a cash surplus, and that cash surplus has been used to reinvest in the different assets instead of taking out loans. That's helped keep the budgets be tight, but going forward, we are going to have to be very mindful of those on fixed incomes because those coming into the community are building bigger houses, and there seem to be more children coming into the community. So yes, at the moment, my focus is a little bit skewed on the younger generation, only because of my day-to-day interactions with my own kids. But I also have senior family members in this community who are also on fixed incomes. And I don't want to see any one of them pushed out of this community. So we need to use the different tax rebates that we have available. And that's one that I support as a member of the Board of Selectmen. There's a tax work-off where if you meet certain criteria, one of them being if you're retired, you can work and reduce your real estate tax bill by the hours you're putting in. So I think continuing with this fiscal responsibility and keeping the budgets tight is how we're going to manage the future and the tax rate.
Thank you. Jeff, same question if you would like to.
Sure. I mentioned it in my opening. We have to be careful. This town has to grow, and change is inevitable. But as we do that, again, we have to make sure we're not pushing our seniors and other people that are on fixed incomes out of their households. We do that through fiscal responsibility. We do that by maybe voting better than what we've done so far. There are two examples that come to mind. One goes back to the Russo Fields. And when we talk about that, the first option at the Russo Fields was to vote for $18 million, which was 2 fields that equaled $9 million. There was an additional $9 million for a gymnasium. The second vote at Russo Field was to vote for just to implement the 2 fields at $9 million total without the gymnasium. The difference between my opponent and I is she voted for the $18 million option. Myself, along with the entire finance committee, voted for the $9 million option. And our thoughts behind that was, we knew in the back of our minds that, and it was public at the time, that there's a potential for a new school to be built. And with that new school being built, there would be a gymnasium built. Our studies and our data and all the work that we did, and it was fact-based decision-making, indicated that we only needed 1 gymnasium in place, not 2. It's decisions like that that we need to do better at to protect our seniors, and not just our seniors. I don't want to pay more taxes. I pay enough taxes. I would like my tax bill not to get higher. But more importantly, I don't want to do this job and push people out of their homes. That's not what this is going to be about for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is multiple questions again. We're going to ask this to Jeff first. So how do I begin? Okay. Please tell me about your most recent 1 or 2 actions that you have taken in your recent town roles. How have you made a difference? And it goes on to ask, please describe a recent time when you voted against a warrant article or spending item and why. Please describe your volunteer activities in town and how what you have done in them will you help you prepare for your role as selectman. What are your thoughts and opinions on the possibilities of building a new school or schools?
Is that one question?
All lumped in. It was by one submission, one person, so they all just put it all down.
Do you want to give each candidate a little bit more time on that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's possible, you read that one more time.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Actually, yeah. So please tell us about your most recent 1 or 2 actions that you've taken in your recent town roles, and how have you made a difference? So that's part 1 of 4. Please describe a recent time when you voted against a warrant article or spending item, and why. Part 3, please describe your volunteer activities in town and what they've done to help you prepare for your role as selectman. And the last part of this question is, what are your thoughts and opinions on the possibilities of building a new school or schools?
How much time do you want to give them?
Standard questions 2, so I mean, we could do 6.
6 minutes?
Yeah, I mean,
You don't have to go all 6, but I mean, that's a lot. Please try not to go 6.
I think we need intermission and popcorn in between.
yeah. Waters and pins over there.
So, all right, question 1, I guess. Roles and actions, and how did they make a difference? I'll take 2 of my most recent volunteer activities. 1 on the Recreational Space Committee. That committee consisted of a wide cross-functional team from town, from DPW to Conservation to Finance Committee. If I name them all, I'll forget them all, but many of the youth activities, the high school, both the school committee and the athletic director. And we worked on a plan to improve athletics in town. And two things came out of that committee. 1, early on, as we started looking through the numbers and understanding our needs, we quickly identified that one of the things we could do was install netting along the high school field. And by installing the netting, it allowed soccer to be played there. A little too risky without the netting, balls going out into the street, kids going out to get the ball, things like that. So we went through the town process. We boosters contributed money, the town contributed money, the school contributed money, and the youth athletics contributed money. And at the end of the day, we were able to open up that field to a whole nother sport, which did 2 things. 1, it's a better playing experience, as most of the high schools now are playing on turf fields, so it makes us a little more even. And 2, the youth sports were able to get involved, and also play a lot of spring sports there. So for short money, through that committee, we were able to increase our participation on that field and get better use out of that field. Second with that, we have a meeting next week from a planning perspective, but soon behind the Council on Aging here, there'll be some pickleball courts. There'll be a revamped and revised basketball court right across from us here, as well as a basketball court and a tennis court at the high school. But that was a large group of different people from town, all working together to achieve a goal. And it was nice to be vice chair on that committee and really help drive that through. Boosters, one of my favorite volunteer piece. Again, looking at data to make fact-based decisions. Our boosters, if you don't know, hands out varsity jackets to kids, and the rule was you had to be a varsity athlete for 3 years in a row to get the jacket. When we looked at that, too many kids were getting their jackets at graduation, at which point, honestly, the jacket probably went to the closet and never got worn. I actually have one of those from my daughter in the closet at home. We looked at that, it just didn't make sense. Booster spends an average between $15,000 and $20,000 at the awards banquet every year. So what we did was we took a look at the numbers and we realized if they were playing for 2 years, they were playing for 3 years. And we adjusted that role. And it's one of the coolest things now, excuse me, to walk into the gym in the winter and see all the kids with all the varsity jackets and the school pride and the town pride that comes along with that. So that is my answer to question 1. I can't read my handwriting on question 2.
Against spending.
Voted against spending. Well, the good news is I kind of just answered that question with the Russo Field moments ago. So I'm going to move on from that. Volunteer activities. Talked a little bit about it. But boosters, in addition to being president, was treasurer. One of the unique things we did at treasurer, when I was treasurer, is we made the treasury transparent. Right? We put rules in place that now we pass around the actual bank statement and the actual invoices. So every boosters meeting, there's a binder that makes its way through the crowd. I've been involved in youth sports for 20 years. I remember at one point when I was YA president, there were like 4 Brockton Little Leagues, and one of the Brockton Little Leagues had issue where the treasurer kind of absconded with the money, with some of the money. So that money's precious. That money provides a lot of joy and happiness to our youth, and we just want to get things in place to prevent that from happening. YAA mentioned it briefly, but when I got there was no website. There was no good way to communicate, and that's one of the pillars, I think, for my selectman candidacy, is we need to communicate better as a town. We can't have a town with 3,200, we dead? 3,200 households, which, you know, if you do back of the napkin math, is 5,000 people in town. We can't have 5,000 people in town and then have 300, 400 people show up for town meeting. We don't even get 10% of the town involved in spending $39 million, right? That's crazy. And we need to figure out a way to make more people aware and to get more people involved in town. So YAA, we built a website to improve communication. It's something I'm very, just curious, is that 3 minutes or 1 minute?
1 minute left.
So I'm going to jump onto the new school real quick. I'm in favor of something happening as far as the school goes. But again, I pride myself on fact-based decisions. We don't have enough data to say what should be done at this point. Roselle, old, definitely probably doesn't meet today's teaching standards in terms of breakout rooms and collaboration areas and things along those lines. I was in Roselle for a PTO meeting recently. I haven't been to Spring Street in a while, but I imagine it's the same. The piece I struggle with is Howard. But again, the thing that I am in favor of right now is in the fall, we'll probably be asked to vote for appropriate money for a feasibility study on the schools. And that's going to give us the data to make better decisions. So I think something needs to be done with the schools. I'm not at the point to say it should be all 3 schools or it should be 2 schools. It's data and information that I want to get. Thank you.
Okay, do you need me to repeat the question, or? Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna need like 6 minutes. Please tell us about your most recent 1 or 2 actions that you've taken in your recent town roles. How have you made a difference? Second part is, please describe a recent time when you voted against a warrant article or spending item and why. Please describe your volunteer activities in town and what you've done in them to help you prepare your role as selectman. And lastly, what are your thoughts and opinions on the possibilities of building a new school or schools?
Great, thank you. Well, first, I guess my passion project that I've done up to this point has involved the playground. And getting involved with the playground really started with my time on the finance committee. What's special about the playground and how we were able to pay for that is that in our real estate tax bills, there's a percentage that goes into a community preservation fund. So that money is already sitting there and it's already been allocated for certain types of projects. So I was able to use my education, my experience, my volunteer time here in town, and to learn about this. Now I'm done. We're good. Was able to use this money that had already been allocated and to use it to our benefit. And doing those sort of fiscal responsibility type ideas is why I want to continue in this role. So between the playground and, I'm sorry, I forgot the rest of the question at this point.
Let's go back to that. All right, so recent action you've taken in town roles, time you voted against a warrant article or spending, volunteer activities, and the last part is opinions on building a new school.
All right. Well, I can get into the volunteer activities. I've been involved in committees here in town since I was pregnant with my daughter back in 2009. I started with the finance committee. I got involved with Girl Scouts. I got involved with the PTO. I was the president of the PTO. When I got to the parent-teacher organization, we were meeting at the Howard School, and even then in our meetings, the building was tight. The nonprofit hadn't been recognized legally as a nonprofit, so I used my education and my experience to turn it into a 501c3 and to bring the tax filings current. And that meant that anyone who made any donations to the PTO got a tax deduction for a charitable contribution. And so we were able to use that in some of our marketing and to help build up the PTO. When I started with the organization, we had a very, very small bank account. And when I left, we had tens and tens of thousands of dollars in the bank account. So it had been a very successful couple of years. Now, talking about the new school. Do we need a new school? In my opinion, yes, we need something. I agree with my opponent in fact-based decisions. I was on the last school building committee as a representative of the finance committee. So I attended the meetings, I was involved, and I got to see how the different analysis was done on whether or not we should repair the schools, should we improve them, and to make the different decision on which one makes the most sense for our residents and for our future residents. We looked at the numbers and decided that the school had been there long enough. We not just long enough, there was a lot more than just that. But there is also a program with the state right now where we can get reimbursed. And so that sort of fiscal responsibility is what I bring to the table, and I want to continue to lead with. So between using money that's already been allocated so it doesn't cost our residents more, we got a beautiful playground. We got an amazing new high school. The town only paid for, I believe, less than half of it. So it's these decisions that I want to keep bringing to the table and help move us forward.
Thank you. So next question, I'm going to start with Mary.
Jason, just to let you know, you're at a half an hour, so that was the base time, so at your discretion, you can go max 15 more minutes.
Okay. I will ask 2 more questions. Okay. This is the last question that's directed at Mary, and then you have the option to answer if you would like. I'll make sure which ones, because there's 2 more left for you, and I want to make sure one is more unique, you know, instead of covering something that you've already kind of talked about. Okay, we're going to ask this one. Meredith, in your Meet the Candidates interview, you identified water, sidewalks, and intersections as your top 3 priorities. Please tell us what you have done in your first term as selectman to improve or address each.
Thank you. That's actually an easy one for me. We're on.
I think I built it like really close.
Is that what it is? Okay, sorry. So with the sidewalks, before I joined the Board of Selectmen, I was on the Complete Streets Committee. And that's where a lot of research and analysis was done here in town to determine what modes of transportation need improvement here in town, and how can we focus the finances to make sure we make the best possible improvements for all of the residents. And at that time, one of the main focuses, I believe it was the police chief who said safe routes to school, that the children should have sidewalks to get for any of the students that are walkers, they should have a safe route to school. So between being on the Complete Streets Committee and now between the Finance Committee, where we had money designated into a separate stabilization fund specifically for sidewalks, and now with my volunteer work with the Old Colony Planning Council, I'm trying to work on finding federal infrastructure grants so that we can continue to improve the sidewalks here in town. Working together, and intersections was the other item I was really focused on. And that is, again, with the Old Colony Planning Council. By being a member of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, I get to attend these meetings each month and see the different priority projects that are in the Old Colony region. And depending on the funding that's available and as the projects change, they reallocate the priority. And so being on that committee, I think, will give us a leg up as we try to move forward with some of these different infrastructure and intersection upgrades.
You have the
Microphone works, I'll talk for a bit. I mentioned it in my opening statement. For me, my 3 sort of pillars that I'm basing my selectman candidacy on are managing growth, right? Talk about that briefly. But we need to do that through planning. Right now, we don't have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan in town. Part of that planning, for me, is protecting our farmland. I grew up in a farming town, moved here, was part of the reason why we chose. And there's two parts to that. One, I absolutely love being in a right to farm community. Number two, we can't afford what's happening down on Scotland Street with a piece of property and 90 new homes coming in. We can't have another one of those. That is going to stress the infrastructure of this town. That is going to stress the water department. That is going to stress the fire department. That is already stressing the school department. And we have to find a way through planning and working together, all the departments in town, working together to prevent, or to slow, I don't know if we can prevent, but to slow down those actions and that type of growth at that rate. The town cannot handle more of that. It's not just that, right? It's also the 24 apartments right on 106 can't be in a worse spot. Second, better communication. I talked about that a little. There's probably 5,000 people that can vote in town. 300 to 500 show up at a town meeting to spend $39 million. That's nuts. It's not right. The town has to do a better job getting people interested in what's going on. I bet you half the town doesn't know that all the money that we spend in town is actually voted on at town meeting. We need to change that. We need to get that more in sync. And the other piece on communication, while the school department and the water department operate independently, I think it's important for the selectmen to get together with them once or twice a year, just to understand what they're doing and for them to understand what the selectmen's doing. And also I think it's the selectmen's responsibility to point out to those two independent groups what their impact can be to the citizens of the town.
Thank you. Okay, this might be the last question. How are we doing on time? Okay, this will be the last full-length question, and then we have 2 more questions after that. I'm going to see if we can get through them really quickly, if we can, but this will be the last one, maybe. We'll see.
Fun for you.
Yeah, exactly. A most recent, we're going to ask this to Jeff first. A most recent town meeting, the town rejected a plan for an $18 million athletic facility on Lincoln Street. How did you vote on the issue and why?
Apparently I'm answering questions out of order. I didn't know what they were, but so again, I talked about that. There were 4 articles for that night. Only 3 would ever be passed. As it turned out, only 1 was passed. First article again was $18 million for 2 athletic fields, playground, walking trails, and a gymnasium. The second article was 2 athletic fields, no gymnasium. The third article was to put turf at the high school, the field that's not turf, the baseball field that's right in front of the school. And the fourth article is the one that I talked about as well with pickleball courts, basketball courts, and the tennis court. So I'll say it again, while I was on that committee, vice chair of that committee, took a lot of pride in all the work that was done. I couldn't in good conscience vote for that gymnasium. So my vote took place, it's in Finance Committee, I think it's around the end of the month, November 29th, November 30th. But the Finance Committee as a whole voted not to recommend that first article, the $18 million article, and the Finance Committee as a whole voted to recommend the second article, the $9 million article. And that's that. Thank you much.
Same question.
Thanks. I did vote for the entire 18 million budget. And the reason I did is I have 3 children. I see on a day-to-day basis as they try to play in the different sports that they don't have a gymnasium available, that we have to go to another town in order to play indoor soccer at 8:30 at night with 9-year-olds. It gets difficult. Our town is continuing to grow. We need to make sure we have the services that people moving to town and residing and living their entire lives in town, we need to make sure they all have the services they need. We need to have recreation space for our children, and I firmly believe that.
Thank you. So we're going to ask 2 more questions. I want all the questions people submitted answered, but let's try to keep these to a minute, or 2 minutes, I guess. But try to keep it a minute, please. I know we make it up as we go along, right? Okay. So this is the last question, directed towards Meredith. Meredith, in the past Board of Selectmen's meeting, you argued against the most recent tax split and also against allowing the school to purchase a special needs van without town approval. You then voted in favor of both. Why would you vote to approve something that you verbalized not approving of?
You know, I've had a lot of thought about this school van, and I'd argued against it because I didn't understand the intention of how this special stabilization fund was set up. I've been on the finance committee for many years. I was here when that stabilization fund was discussed, when we had meetings about whether or not it would be beneficial to the town, would it help the students it was intended to help. And so my conversation and debate with the school superintendent was to make sure that those intentions were being met. As he further explained that this will specifically help the students that that stabilization fund was set up for, I did vote in favor of it.
You can answer if you'd like.
Quickly. Under a minute, I promise. I watched that meeting. I think for me, the difficulty with voting yes for that particular item is that I believe that every other vehicle in town that's ever been voted on has been voted on as a capital expense. And I feel like the community should have had the right to vote on that as a capital expense as well. Personally, I would have voted for it, but I would have voted for it at the town meeting in the capital budget. That's it.
Okay, and last question, I promise. In recent years, the school committee has pushed the town's per pupil spending as a meaningful statistic. In your opinion, can the town afford to meet the school committee's expectations on this metric?
Got an hour? Real quick, the school committee puts out a number on a per pupil expenditure, and they dilute that number. I'm sorry, I've had this argument with the school committee for a couple of years now. They dilute that number by including school choice children in that number. I have no issue with school choice. Some of my kids' best friends, I have 3 kids that have just gone through the high school. Some of my kids' best friends come from school choice. But school choice funding comes in at $5,500. The school committee is saying that per pupil funding is $13,000 per pupil. I'm rounding. My point is, if you take those school choice kids out and kind of remove that money, our per pupil spending is closer to $15,000. It's $14,500. So pride in the town, I will fight that one every time. Our taxpayers are paying $14,500 per pupil, not 13. Beyond that, as far as the per pupil spending goes, the school committee looks at it as a negative that we pay some of the lowest per pupil spending, yet our graduation rates are high, our attendance rates are high. There are all these other metrics that the school committee has, and they're all outstanding. And I struggle with this because what we should be doing is high-fiving the school for doing a great job for less money than all the other towns around us. But the school committee wants to take it the other way and use that as a point to get more money. And in the finance committee, Mo McCarthy said it best at our last meeting. He says, throwing money at a problem doesn't potentially solve it, right? So it's not just about money. It's about the quality of our teachers. It's about the quality of the education they get over there. Again, I have one daughter who's 22, one son who's 20, another one who's 18. The reason I'm here and I'm running for selectman is because all 3 of them have gone through that school system at this point, and I have the time to do it. They had a fantastic experience. I love the school system. I'm all for everything, but money isn't the answer to everything.
Thank you. Same question.
I understand the concern about the per pupil spending, but I also understand that's not the only part of the conversation that we should be listening to. When the school committee came to us and gave a presentation at the last meeting, they presented about how well the school was doing in various departments, but then they talked about what they needed, what the funding was for, and which departments within the school system really needed that support. It sounded as though the student services, the special education, continues to be a very expensive part of the school budget. And based on the information, based on what I see in my interactions, I have 3 children in the elementary schools. I have interactions with the special education department, And I can see the things that the school committee is saying when they come and they present to us. The facts that they're presenting about our excellent graduation rates and our dropout rates are fantastic. I went to school here, I'm a product of it. But I don't think the per pupil spending is what we need to focus on. We need to focus on what the school needs, get it to them, and then plan how we're going to manage this going forward.
Thank you. So that concludes the questions. The candidates do have the option to provide a quick 2-minute closing remark if they so choose.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you. First, let me thank David and everybody, Council on Aging and everybody for the time to allow both of us to express our views and opinions tonight. As we wrap up the evening, I want to bring you back to when we first started chatting. Told you a little bit about my family and why we happily picked West Bridgewater. We talked about my accomplishments, various leadership roles, and my proven ability to get things done. Let me say it one more time, my proven ability to get things done. That's worth repeating. From there, we got into some great questions, but what I want to reinforce one more time, my 3 main goals I have as your selectman. First, enhancing fiscal responsibility. Next, improving communication. And finally, managing growth. Honestly, slowing it down. This is not a job where all you do is you show up and you vote twice a month. It's about setting goals and achieving them. It's about being out with the community. I hope you agree that I'm the best candidate for this responsibility. And please, get out and vote next Saturday, April 8th. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I too want to share my thank you to David Gagney, to the board and everyone in the office in getting this put together. Marilyn Mather and the Council on Aging, thank you all. I want to focus on my education, my experience, and my motivation and love for this community. I have the education, born here, bred here. My husband and I have children here. We have retiring and aging family here. We're not going anywhere. My education, with understanding the tax laws and municipal finance, with my experience being on the finance committee, leading different nonprofits, and as well as my experience as a partner in a CPA firm, bringing all of that to this role, I would like to continue what I've been doing for the last few years. I'm not just showing up at meetings, I'm actually volunteering for additional roles where I can help bring West Bridgewater to the forefront. There is a lot of grant money out there, and I'm really focused on that. I want to continue my work with the Old Colony Planning Council, continue the relationships I've made at I went to the Massachusetts Municipal Association annual meeting in January, met with a lot of women elected municipal officials, so I'd like to continue with those relationships and see what other money we can bring to town. And most importantly, please vote. Your vote matters. It comes down to just a couple of votes. West Bridgewater is very lucky to have 2 different people looking to volunteer and to serve our residents. So for that, I say we have the best community. Please come out and vote April 8th.
Thank you again, everyone, for attending tonight.